The following content is provided for educational and entertainment purposes only. The automotive industry is subject to rapid technological shifts, regulatory changes, and economic fluctuations. Any discussion regarding vehicle features, market valuations, legislative mandates, or future technologies is based on historical trends, current industry announcements, and potential outcomes observed in the sector. This video does not constitute financial, legal, or professional investment advice. Viewers are strongly encouraged to conduct their own due diligence and consult with qualified professionals before making significant financial decisions related to vehicle purchases, insurance contracts, or long-term investments. By the end of December 2026, the vehicle sitting in your driveway will officially cease to be a piece of private hardware and will instead become the most sophisticated surveillance and revenue generation tool you have ever owned. Right now, a quiet but massive shift is happening in the American automotive landscape that most drivers are completely unprepared for. We are not just talking about the transition from gasoline to electricity. We are talking about the end of the dumb car and the birth of the software-defined vehicle, or SDV. Imagine walking out to your car on a Monday morning, only to find that your acceleration has been throttled because a monthly subscription failed to process, or finding a notification on your dashboard that your insurance premium has increased in real time, because the sensors in your steering wheel detected that you were tired during your commute the night before. This isn't science fiction. This is the regulatory and technological roadmap for the 2026 model year. In 2021, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was signed into law, and hidden within its thousands of pages was Section 24220. This mandate requires that by 2026, new vehicles must be equipped with advanced drunk and impaired driving prevention technology. This means that every car sold in the United States is about to be fitted with passive sensors that monitor your blood alcohol content through your breath or touch, and infrared cameras that track your eye movement to ensure you are paying attention. If the car decides you are not fit to drive, it has the potential to simply refuse to start or, in some cases, pull itself over. The era of the car being a mechanical extension of the driver's will is dying, and the era of the car as a regulated, connected, and monetized appliance is beginning. Today, we are conducting a deep dive masterclass into the 2026 automotive reality. This video solves the single biggest problem facing every American driver today: the risk of massive depreciation and buyer's remorse caused by purchasing a vehicle that will be technologically obsolete in less than 24 months. We are going to break down the specific engineering shifts, the legislative mandates, and the financial structures that will define what you drive in 2026. If you are planning on buying a car between now and then, you are standing at a crossroads. One path leads to owning a legacy vehicle that will be difficult to service and even harder to sell, while the other leads to a high-tech ecosystem that offers unprecedented safety, but at the cost of your absolute privacy. To understand 2026, we have to look at the death of the traditional vehicle architecture. For the last 100 years, cars were built around an engine and a chassis. In 2026, cars are being built around a central computer. Historically, a car had dozens of small, isolated computers called electronic control units, or ECUs. One would control the windows, another the brakes, and another the fuel injection. These units rarely talked to each other. By 2026, American manufacturers like Ford, GM, and Rivian are moving toward zonal architecture. This means the car has one or two massive brains that control everything via high-speed Ethernet backbone. The primary reason for this shift is weight and cost. By reducing the miles of copper wiring required to connect all those tiny ECUs, manufacturers can save up to 100 pounds of weight, which is critical for extending the range of electric vehicles. However, the potential outcome for the consumer is a total loss of the right to repair. When the entire car is controlled by a single encrypted central processor, your local mechanic can no longer simply plug in a generic scanner to see why your check engine light is on. They will need proprietary software keys that only the manufacturer possesses. Furthermore, we must address the AS revolution. For years, the biggest headache for American EV drivers was the format war between charging plugs. You had the Tesla superchargers using one plug, and everyone else using the CCS plug. By 2026, that war is officially over. Almost every major manufacturer selling in the US, including Toyota, Honda, and BMW, has committed to switching to the North American Charging Standard, NACS, for their 2026 models. This means that for the first time, a Ford owner will be able to pull into a Tesla supercharger station and plug in without an adapter. This solves the range anxiety problem for millions, But it also creates a monopoly-like environment where the charging infrastructure is increasingly controlled by a handful of entities. We are seeing historical trends where standardized infrastructure leads to higher adoption rates, much like how the standardization of the USB-C port changed consumer electronics. By 2026, the convenience of charging will finally mirror the convenience of the gas station, but the cost per kilowatt-hour will likely be dynamic, fluctuating based on grid demand and your specific vehicle's data profile. We also need to discuss the financial reality of the average transaction price. Currently, the average price of a new car in the US hovers around $48,000. Data suggests that by 2026, the entry-level car as we once knew it, the $20,000 reliable sedan, will be virtually extinct. This is due to the mandatory safety tech and emissions equipment required by the EPA's increasingly stringent standards. For the 2026 model year, the EPA has set a fleet-wide target of roughly 161 grams of County 2 per mile. To hit this, manufacturers are forced to hybridize or electrify their entire lineups. Even the legendary heavy-duty trucks like the Ford F-150 or the Chevy Silverado are being re-engineered with high-voltage architectures. This shift represents a massive engineering challenge to maintain the towing capacity Americans expect while meeting these CO2 targets. Manufacturers are turning to range-extended electric platforms. Unlike a traditional hybrid where the engine drives the wheels, these 2026 models often use a small gasoline engine solely as a generator to keep the battery charged. This allows for the instant torque of an EV with the long-range capability of a gas truck, but it adds layers of complexity that will make these vehicles significantly more expensive to maintain long-term. Another critical pillar of 2026 is the advancement of solid-state battery technology. While we have been using lithium-ion batteries for decades, 2026 is the year we expect to see the first pilot production runs of solid-state cells in consumer vehicles. These batteries replace the liquid electrolyte with a solid ceramic or polymer. The potential outcomes are staggering. Energy densities exceeding 400 Wh/kg, which is nearly double what we see in many current EVs. This means a car could travel 600 miles on a single charge and recharge in less than 10 minutes without the fire risk associated with current liquid electrolytes. However, case studies from Toyota and QuantumScape suggest that while the technology is ready, the scale is not. In 2026, these batteries will be reserved for ultra-high-end flagship models. If you are a buyer, this creates a technology trap. If you buy a standard lithium-ion EV in 2026, you may find its resale value plummets when solid-state batteries become the new standard in 2028 or 2029. Finally, we have to look at the in-car economy. By 2026, your dashboard will no longer just be for navigation. It will be a marketplace. With the integration of 5G and eventually 6G connectivity, manufacturers are partnering with retailers and service providers to offer contextual commerce. Your car will know when you are low on coffee and offer a discount at a nearby drive-thru that you can purchase with a single click on your steering wheel. But this convenience comes with a trade-off. Your car is constantly generating data, terabytes of it. It knows how hard you brake, how fast you take corners, and exactly where you go. In 2026, usage-based insurance (UBI) will become the default. Instead of a flat monthly rate, your insurance premium could change daily based on your driver score, generated by the car's sensors. If you drive during high-risk hours like 2 a.m. or on high-risk roads, your cost of ownership goes up instantly. This represents the total quantification of the American driver. In this first part of our series, we have laid the groundwork for the structural shift of 2026. We've looked at the legislative mandates for driver monitoring, the unification of charging standards, the death of cheap hardware, and the rise of the central computer. But this is just the beginning. In the next section, we are going to dive deep into the specific models hitting the showroom floors in 2026 and how to navigate the subscription trap that manufacturers are setting for unsuspecting buyers. The future of driving is no longer about the open road. It's about the data stream. We are here to make sure you know exactly how to stay in control of both. To understand the magnitude of the shift occurring in 2026, imagine a typical American driver named James. James just picked up a brand new 2026 luxury SUV. It is sleek, silent, and loaded with screens that rival his home theater. On his first long road trip from Chicago to Nashville, the summer heat begins to swelter. James reaches for the climate control to activate the ventilated seats he knows are physically installed in the vehicle. Instead of a cooling breeze, a notification pops up on his 15-inch center display. Feature not active. To enable ventilated seating, please select a plan. $15 per month or a one-time lifetime activation for $450. James is experiencing the pinnacle of the features-as-a-service model, a trend that has moved from a controversial experiment to a standard industry pillar by 2026. Historical trends show that this transition began years ago with simple satellite radio. But by 2026, manufacturers have realized that the hardware-only sales model is no longer sustainable for their bottom lines. Companies like BMW, General Motors, and Toyota are leading the charge into this microtransaction ecosystem. For example, the 2026 BMW 9/3, a cornerstone of their electric lineup, is now built with a universal hardware set. This means every 9/3 leaves the factory with 360-degree cameras, heated steering wheels, and advanced parking sensors. However, these features are dormant. BMW's strategy, which they have doubled down on despite early consumer pushback, allows them to streamline manufacturing. It is cheaper for them to build one version of the car and gate the features behind software than it is to manage 50 different hardware configurations on the assembly line. For the driver, this means your car's capability is no longer defined by what you bought at the dealership, but by what you are willing to pay for on a Tuesday morning via an over-the-air update. Consider the 2026 Cadillac Lyriq. This vehicle is a masterclass in the software-defined era. It features the latest iteration of Super Cruise, GM's hands-free driving technology. While the hardware is integrated into the sticker price, the actual utility of the system requires a recurring commitment. Case studies from 2025 and early 2026 show that GM is eyeing a target of nearly $400 million in annual software revenue. To hit those numbers, Super Cruise now costs approximately $39.99 per month. If James decides to skip a payment, the high-definition mapping and infrared driver attention cameras, hardware he technically owns, simply sit idle. This creates a psychological shift in ownership. In 2026, you don't really own your car's features. You are effectively licensing them from the manufacturer. Even the most popular vehicle in America, the Toyota RAV4, which saw a massive redesign for the 2026 model year, has not escaped this reality. The new Toyota Audio Multimedia System is a marvel of connectivity, but it operates on a tiered subscription structure. Want real-time traffic updates to avoid a pile-up on the I-95? That is part of the Drive Connect plan at $15 per month. Want to start your car from your phone on a freezing January morning? That is Remote Connect, another $15 monthly fee. While Toyota offers a bundled package for $25, the potential outcome for the average household is a new, permanent monthly bill that rivals their Netflix or Spotify subscriptions. The data is clear. By 2026, the automotive industry expects to generate billions in recurring revenue, and the U.S. consumer is the primary target. This shift is made possible by the 5G-enabled central nervous system of the 2026 vehicle. We call this the zonal architecture. In older cars, if you wanted to add a feature like a backup camera, you had to physically run wires and install a new module. In 2026, the car's brain is a high-performance computer cluster, often powered by chips from NVIDIA or Qualcomm. This allows for what engineers call dynamic resource allocation. Imagine James is driving through a heavy rainstorm. The car's AI assistant, which in 2026 is often a customized version of a large language model like GPT-4 or a proprietary MBOS assistant from Mercedes-Benz, notices the wipers are at full speed and the traction control is engaging frequently. The assistant might voice prompt, "James, I detect hazardous road conditions. Would you like to activate enhanced traction mode for the next hour for $4.99? It is a seamless, friction-free transaction that happens while his hands are on the wheel. The 2026 Mercedes-Benz GLC is a prime example of this AI co-pilot integration. It uses the MB.OS architecture to create a truly personalized environment. This system doesn't just wait for commands. It predicts intent. If James has a meeting at 9 a.m. on his sync calendar, the car will precondition the cabin temperature, calculate the most fuel-efficient route based on real-time grid pricing for EV charging, and even suggest a coffee shop along the way that has an open charging stall. But this level of integration requires the car to be always on and always communicating with the cloud. This brings us to the hidden cost of the 2026 driving experience: the total erosion of data privacy. Every sensor in a 2026 model is a data harvest point. The interior infrared cameras aren't just checking if James is drunk. They are tracking his pupil dilation and gaze duration when he passes a billboard. The microphones are listening for keywords to better target in-car advertisements. Historical trends in the tech industry suggest that when a product becomes a platform, the user becomes the product. In 2026, the car is the ultimate mobile platform. Manufacturers are now forming deep partnerships with insurance companies and data brokers. If the car's telematics show that James frequently exceeds the speed limit by even 5 miles per hour, that data can be sold to his insurance provider, leading to a potential outcome of a premium hike without him ever being pulled over by a police officer. Step by step, the 2026 car is being transformed into a high-margin service hub. For the manufacturer, a car sold in 2026 is no longer a one-time profit event. It is a 10-year revenue stream. For the consumer, this means the total cost of ownership has to be recalculated. It's no longer just the loan payment, gas, and insurance. You now have to factor in the software stack required to make the car actually worth driving. If you buy a 2026 vehicle and refuse to pay for the subscriptions, you are essentially driving a high-tech paperweight. A car filled with expensive sensors and chips that do nothing but add weight and complexity. As we move further into this 2026 masterclass, we have to ask, what happens when these systems fail? If your car's ability to brake or steer is tied to a software cloud, what is the protocol for a cyber attack or a simple server outage? And more importantly, how are the new 2026 safety mandates regarding kill switches and impairment detection actually going to play out when you're just trying to get home after a long shift? In the next part, we are going to dive into the dark side of the 2021 Infrastructure Act's mandates and the specific hardware being installed in 2026 dashboards that can legally shut your vehicle down without your consent. The freedom of the road is getting a digital leash, and you need to know exactly how long that leash is. The digital leash we are discussing is officially known in legislative circles as the Advanced Impaired Driving Prevention Technology Mandate. To understand the gravity of this for the 2026 model year, let's look at a scenario involving a driver named Sarah. Sarah is a hardworking nurse in Ohio finishing a grueling 14-hour double shift in November 2026. She is exhausted, her eyes are heavy, and she just wants to get home. As she climbs into her 2026 midsize crossover, she doesn't realize that her car has already performed a diagnostic on her physical state before she even puts it in gear. The vehicle is equipped with a driver monitoring system, or DMS, which is now standard equipment due to the 2021 Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. This system uses high-resolution infrared cameras mounted on the steering column and the A-pillars. These cameras do not just see Sarah. They map 68 distinct points on her face in real time. The system calculates her blink rate, the duration of her eye closures, and the deviation of her gaze from the road ahead. Because Sarah is rubbing her eyes and blinking slowly, the car's central processor flags her as impaired by fatigue. In a pre-2026 vehicle, Sarah might get a simple coffee cup icon on the dashboard suggesting she take a break. In her 2026 model, the potential outcome is much more restrictive. The car issues an audible warning. Attention level low. Please pull over safely. When Sarah tries to merge onto the highway, the car's lane keep assist becomes more aggressive, physically resisting her steering inputs if she drifts even an inch toward the line. If the sensors detect a microsleep, a closure of the eyes lasting more than 2 seconds, the vehicle is programmed to activate its hazard lights, slow down autonomously, and in extreme cases, guided by its high-precision GPS, navigate itself to the shoulder of the road and disable the accelerator. This is the functional reality of Section 24220 of the federal mandate. While the stated goal is to eliminate the 10,000-plus annual deaths caused by drunk driving in the United States, the technological implementation covers all forms of impairment, including medical emergencies and extreme fatigue. For the American driver, this means the car is no longer a passive tool. It is a chaperone with the legal and technical authority to overrule your inputs. Historical trends in automotive safety, such as the transition to mandatory seatbelts in 1968 or airbags in the 1990s, were mechanical and binary. You either used them or you didn't. The 2026 mandates are algorithmic and predictive. This introduces a significant margin for error. Imagine if Sarah wasn't tired, but was simply wearing heavy eye makeup or squinting against a low autumn sun. Case studies from early testers of these infrared systems have shown that certain lighting conditions or physiological traits can trigger false positives. In 2026, a false positive doesn't just result in an annoying beep. It can result in your vehicle entering a limp mode, where power is restricted until a cloud-based operator clears you to drive or a certain amount of time passes. Beyond the cameras, we are seeing the integration of passive alcohol sensors. Unlike a traditional breathalyzer that requires you to blow into a tube, these sensors are integrated into the start button or the steering wheel leather. They use a technology called distant spectroscopic analysis. By shining an infrared light through the skin of your fingertip or analyzing the ambient air in the cabin for ethanol molecules, the car can estimate your blood alcohol content, BAC, within seconds. If the system detects a BAC above the legal limit of 0.08%, or in some states the lower 0.05% limit, the car simply will not shift out of park. For the US public, this raises a massive question regarding the Fourth Amendment and the right against unreasonable searches and seizures. In 2026, every time you start your car, you are essentially submitting to a digital sobriety test and a physical health screening. The data generated by these incidents, even the false positives, is stored in the car's Event Data Recorder EDR, also known as the automotive black box. In the event of a crash, or even a routine traffic stop in some jurisdictions, this data can be harvested by law enforcement to determine your state of mind and physical condition in the minutes leading up to the event. The complexity of these systems also drives up the cost of entry and the cost of repair. A minor windshield replacement in a 2016 car was a $300 job. In a 2026 car, because the DMS cameras and ADAS, Advanced Driver Assistance Systems, sensors are calibrated to the specific geometry of the glass, a replacement can cost upwards of $2,500 and requires specialized software calibration that only the dealership can provide. This is a step-by-step enclosure of the independent auto repair market. Furthermore, we must address the kill switch controversy. While the government and manufacturers avoid using that specific term, the functional capability is built into the 2026 architecture. Because these cars are always connected via 5G, they are susceptible to remote commands. Under certain legislative frameworks being discussed in 2026, law enforcement could theoretically send a broadcast deactivation signal to a specific VIN, vehicle identification number, during a high-speed pursuit or if a vehicle is reported stolen. While this sounds like a win for public safety, the potential for mission creep is immense. Could a vehicle be remotely disabled because of an expired registration? Could a lender remotely shut down your car if you are 48 hours late on a high-interest subprime loan payment? In 2026, the hardware to do exactly this is present in nearly 90% of new vehicles sold in the US. The 2026 Ford Mustang Mach-E and the Chevrolet Silverado EV are among the first to fully integrate this remote asset management capability. It is marketed as a convenience feature, the ability to find your car in a crowded lot or heat it up before you get in. But that same two-way communication channel is a permanent tether to the manufacturer's home office. If the manufacturer decides that your driving style is causing excessive wear to the battery pack, they can remotely throttle your peak horsepower to protect their warranty liability. You are paying for 500 horsepower, but the software might only give you 350 because of a decision made by an algorithm 1,000 miles away. As we analyze the 2026 landscape, we see a clear move toward geofencing. Manufacturers and municipalities are experimenting with the car's ability to automatically enforce local laws. Imagine James, our driver from earlier, entering a zero-emissions zone in a downtown metropolitan area or a school zone with a 20 miles per hour limit. In 2026, his car's GPS and V2X, Vehicle to Everything, communication system receive a signal from the city's infrastructure. The car then automatically limits its speed to exactly 20 miles per hour, or switches its hybrid powertrain to electric-only mode. You are no longer the one deciding how to drive. The environment is deciding for you. This level of control is only possible because of the massive leap in onboard computing power we see in 2026. These cars are essentially rolling data centers. But who owns that data? And what happens when that data center is hacked? We've seen historical trends where digital security lags behind digital implementation. In 2026, a car hack isn't just about someone stealing your credit card info from the infotainment system. It's about someone gaining control of the kill switch and the impairment sensors. In the next part of this deep dive, we are going to look at the battle for the dashboard. We'll explore why Apple and Google are fighting to replace the manufacturer's software entirely, and how the 2026 screen war is actually a battle for the $500 billion a year that Americans spend while they are behind the wheel. We are moving from the era of the engine to the era of the interface, and the stakes couldn't be higher for your wallet and your freedom. To understand why your dashboard is becoming the most contested piece of real estate in the American economy, look no further than a driver named Michael in downtown Los Angeles in May 2026. Michael is driving his 2026 Porsche Taycan, and as he glances at his instrument cluster, he isn't looking at a traditional set of gauges designed by Porsche engineers. Instead, he is looking at a customized aesthetic interface designed by Apple. This is the official arrival of the next-generation Apple CarPlay, a system that doesn't just mirror Michael's phone onto a small center screen, but completely replaces the visual identity of every screen in the car, from the speedometer to the fuel gauge and the climate controls. Historical trends show that for the last decade, car manufacturers and tech giants have existed in a state of uneasy cooperation. But in 2026, that truce has shattered into an all-out war for your attention and your data. Apple and Google have realized that the average American spends roughly 300 hours a year behind the wheel. That is 300 hours of untapped digital interaction. By 2026, Apple has successfully moved from being a guest on your dashboard to becoming the primary operating system for the vehicle's interior. When Michael wants to adjust the temperature in his car, he no longer uses a physical knob or even the Porsche software. He taps a slider within the CarPlay interface. This requires a level of deep integration where the car's hardware must share its core functions, braking data, tire pressure, and battery levels, with a third-party tech company. The potential outcome of this integration is a seamless, smartphone-like experience that makes your car feel like an extension of your digital life. But for the car manufacturers, this is a nightmare scenario. If Apple controls the interface, Apple controls the relationship with the customer. This is why we are seeing a massive countermovement from companies like General Motors. In a move that shocked the industry in late 2024 and is now fully realized in the 2026 model year, GM has officially removed Apple CarPlay and Android Auto from its electric vehicle lineup, including the 2026 Chevrolet Blazer EV and the Equinox EV. Imagine if Michael decided to buy a Chevy instead. He would find that he cannot simply plug in his phone and see his familiar icons. Instead, he is forced to use GM's native software, built on the Android Automotive OS, AOS, platform. Note that this is different from Android Auto. Android Auto is an app that runs on your phone. Android Automotive is the car's actual brain. By forcing Michael to use the native system, GM ensures that they, not Apple, are the ones collecting the data on where Michael goes, what he buys, and how he drives. More importantly, they ensure that Michael has to pay them for data subscriptions once the initial trial period ends. This is a strategic play for a piece of the $500 billion in-car commerce pie. Case studies of this transition suggest a significant friction point for the U.S. public. Drivers who have spent years in the Apple or Google ecosystems are finding themselves at a crossroads in 2026. Do you choose a car based on its mechanical performance, or based on which tech ecosystem it supports? This has led to the rise of software brand loyalty, where a dedicated iPhone user might refuse to buy a 2026 Cadillac simply because it doesn't support the Apple interface. But the battle isn't just about icons on a screen. It is about the very glass you look through. In 2026, the augmented reality heads-up display, or AR HUD, has transitioned from a luxury gimmick to a mainstream safety and marketing tool. In Michael's 2026 vehicle, the entire windshield can act as a transparent monitor. As he approaches a complicated highway interchange, the car doesn't just give him a voice command to turn right. It projects glowing blue arrows directly onto the asphalt from his perspective, showing him exactly which lane to stay in. This is achieved through a combination of high-precision GPS and LiDAR sensors that map the environment in 3 dimensions. However, the in-car economy takes this technology a step further. Imagine Michael is driving past a Starbucks at 8:15 a.m. Through a partnership between the car's software provider and the retailer, a small unobtrusive notification appears on the lower corner of his windshield. Michael, your usual grande latte is available for 20% off at this location. Would you like to order? If he says yes, the car handles the payment through his pre-linked digital wallet and reroutes his navigation to the drive-thru. This is the step-by-step monetization of the driving experience. Your windshield is no longer just a piece of safety glass. It is a conversion funnel for advertisers. By 2026, the data indicates that location-based advertising in vehicles is one of the fastest-growing sectors in the U.S. marketing landscape. The potential outcome is a reduction in the initial purchase price of the car, essentially a subsidized vehicle, if the owner agrees to view a certain number of advertisements or shares their driving data with retail partners. We must also consider the technical architecture that makes this possible. The move to 5G ultra-wideband connectivity as a standard vehicle feature. In 2026, your car is essentially a high-speed router. This connectivity allows for sensing as a service. While Michael is driving, his car's cameras are constantly scanning the road for potholes, faded lane markings, or available parking spots. This data is uploaded in real time to a central cloud where it is sold back to municipalities or other drivers. In 2026, your car isn't just consuming data. It is a worker in a massive distributed data gathering fleet. But as the screens grow and the data flows, we encounter the cognitive overload problem. In 2026, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration (NHTSA) is grappling with a surge in interface-induced distraction. While these systems are designed to be hands-free, the sheer volume of information being projected onto the windshield and the multiple cabin screens can overwhelm a driver's sensory processing. This is why 2026 models are increasingly equipped with interior eye tracking sensors that don't just check for sleepiness, as we discussed in Part 3, but also monitor visual cognitive load. If the car detects that Michael is staring at the AR HUD for too long and ignoring the peripheral movement of a pedestrian, it will automatically dim the digital interface to force his focus back onto the physical world. The 2026 vehicle is a paradox. It is more capable and connected than any machine in history, yet it is also a site of intense surveillance and commercial pressure. As Michael drives through the city, he is being tracked by his manufacturer, his software provider, his insurance company, and the local retailers. Every mile he drives is a series of transactions, some financial, some data-driven. As we close this chapter on the battle for the dashboard, we have to look ahead at the physical reality of these vehicles. If the software is this advanced, what is happening to the hardware that actually touches the road? Specifically, we need to talk about the weight crisis of 2026. With all these screens, sensors, and massive battery packs, the average American vehicle has gained nearly 1,000 pounds in the last decade. This isn't just a performance issue. It's a public safety crisis and a threat to the nation's infrastructure. In the next part, we are going to dive into the physics of 2026. How these silent 7,000-pound electric behemoths are literally crushing American roads, and why your next car might require a special heavy vehicle license or a massive road-wear tax that you never saw coming. The transition to the future isn't just digital. It's a heavy, physical reality that is about to hit the asphalt. To understand the weight of this transformation, we have to look at the scales. In 2026, the average weight of a new vehicle sold in the United States has surged to over 5,000 pounds, a staggering increase that is forcing a total rethink of American civil engineering and traffic safety. Imagine a driver named Robert who just purchased a 2026 Chevrolet Silverado EV. Robert is proud of his truck. It has a 450-mile range and can accelerate from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 5 seconds. But when Robert pulls into his local municipal parking garage in downtown Atlanta, he is met with a new brightly colored digital sign warning. Floor 4 and 5 weight limit 6,000 pounds per stall. EVs and heavy-duty trucks prohibited above level 3. Robert is experiencing the first wave of the 2026 weight crisis. For decades, the average American car weighed between 3,000 and 4,000 pounds. However, the transition to electrification has introduced a massive physical penalty. The battery pack, a 200 kilowatt-hour battery pack, necessary to provide the range and towing capacity American truck buyers demand, weighs nearly 3,000 pounds on its own. When you add the reinforced steel frame required to protect that battery in a collision, the heavy-duty suspension to carry the load, and the luxury interior tech, Robert's truck tips the scales at over 8,500 pounds. This is nearly 3 times the weight of a typical sedan from the year 2000. Historical trends in engineering tell us that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. In 2026, that reaction is happening on our roads. Civil engineers use a principle called the fourth power law to calculate road wear. This law states that the damage caused to a road by a vehicle is proportional to the fourth power of its axle weight. To put this into perspective for 2026, a vehicle that weighs 8,000 pounds does not do twice the damage of a 4,000-pound vehicle. It does 16 times the damage. By 2026, the potential outcomes of this physical reality are manifesting as rapidly deteriorating infrastructure. State departments of transportation are reporting that potholes are forming faster than they can be filled, and bridges that were rated for 50 more years of service are showing structural fatigue decades ahead of schedule. Because of this, 2026 is the year the road wear tax, officially becomes a mainstream reality for millions of Americans. Historically, road maintenance was funded by the federal and state gas tax. But since Robert's electric truck doesn't use a drop of gasoline, he isn't contributing to the Highway Trust Fund through the pump. To solve this multi-billion-dollar revenue gap, states like Oregon, Utah, and Virginia have pioneered the Vehicle Miles Traveled, or VMT tax, which by 2026 has been adopted as a federal pilot program. The step-by-step implementation of this tax is integrated directly into the 2026 vehicle software. Every month, Robert's Silverado automatically sends a data packet to the state DMV via its 5G connection. This packet contains his total mileage and his vehicle's gross vehicle weight rating. Instead of paying 30 cents a gallon at the pump, Robert is billed 4 cents per mile. Because his truck is in the heaviest weight class, he pays a heavy vehicle surcharge. For a typical 12,000-mile driving year, Robert is looking at a tax bill of nearly $600 just for the right to use the asphalt. This is a significant shift in the cost of ownership that many 2026 buyers fail to calculate until the first bill arrives in their inbox. But the physical weight of 2026 vehicles isn't just a financial issue. It is a life-and-death safety crisis. Let's look at the physics of a collision. Kinetic energy is calculated by the formula 1/2mv, where m is mass and v is velocity. Because 2026 EVs like Robert's truck are both exceptionally heavy and exceptionally fast, they carry an amount of kinetic energy that current safety infrastructure was never designed to handle. Case studies from the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety in early 2026 have shown that standard highway guardrails, which were designed to redirect a 3,500-pound car, are being completely obliterated by 7,000-pound electric SUVs. In crash tests, these heavy vehicles are punching straight through the steel barriers, leading to a potential outcome where highway travel becomes significantly more dangerous for those in lighter, legacy vehicles. This has led to the emergence of the two-tiered safety roadway. In 2026, we are seeing the first discussions of mandatory weight-based speed limits. Imagine Robert driving on a rainy highway. His car's GPS and onboard sensors recognize that the vehicle exceeds 6,000 pounds. A notification appears on his dashboard. Heavy vehicle speed restriction active. Maximum 55 miles per hour. While a lighter 2026 sedan might be allowed to travel at 70 miles per hour, Robert is restricted because his stopping distance is nearly 40% longer due to the sheer momentum of his 4-ton truck. Furthermore, the 2026 model year marks the beginning of the weight-based license endorsement. The Department of Transportation is reviewing data that suggests driving an 8,000-pound vehicle that can reach 60 miles per hour in 3 seconds requires a different skill set than driving a traditional car. By late 2026, some states are requiring drivers of vehicles over a certain GVWR to pass a secondary heavy kinetic vehicle test. This isn't a full commercial driver's license, but it is a recognition that these 2026 behemoths are effectively medium-duty trucks being used as family commuters. Even residential life is changing. Imagine Robert tries to park his truck in his suburban driveway. Many older homes built in the 1960s and 70s have concrete pads that were designed for 3,000-pound Ford Mustangs or Chevy Impalas. By 2026, homeowners are reporting cracked driveways and collapsing septic tank lids because their new electric SUVs are simply too heavy for the ground they sit on. The physical footprint of the 2026 vehicle is requiring a massive private investment in reinforced concrete and high-capacity home charging infrastructure. Speaking of charging, the weight of the vehicle directly impacts its efficiency, which brings us to the grid tension of 2026. Because Robert's truck is so heavy, it requires more kilowatt-hours to move 1 mile than a lighter car. This puts an immense strain on the local electrical transformer in his neighborhood. In 2026, managed charging is no longer optional in many U.S. power markets. When Robert plugs his truck in at 6 p.m., his utility company uses the car's two-way communication to delay the charge until 2 a.m. to prevent a neighborhood blackout. The 2026 vehicle is a marvel of power and presence, but it is pushing the physical limits of our world to the breaking point. From the taxes you pay by the mile to the way you must park and the speed at which you are allowed to drive, the weight of your car is now a matter of public policy. But as these 7,000-pound giants dominate the road, another silent revolution is happening under the hood, or rather, where the hood used to be. The way these vehicles actually refuel is undergoing a shift so radical it makes the gas station look like a relic of the Stone Age. In the next part of our deep dive masterclass, we are going to explore the charging wars of 2026. We will look at why your home's electric bill might be about to triple and the secret battery health scores that could determine if your 2026 car is an asset or a liability. The power move is coming, and you need to be ready for the jolt. To understand the power move of 2026, we have to look at a driver named David in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. It is a blistering July afternoon in 2026, and David has just pulled his 2026 Ford F-150 Lightning into his garage. As he plugs in the charger, he isn't just drawing power from the grid to fill his battery. He is participating in a complex, high-stakes energy trade known as V2H, or vehicle-to-home integration. Historically, a car was a consumer of energy. In 2026, David's truck has become a mobile power plant, a backup generator, and a financial instrument all rolled into one. The 2026 model year marks the official death of the one-way charging cable. Most new electric vehicles sold in the United States, from the Hyundai Ioniq 7 to the Rivian R1S, now come standard with bidirectional charging capabilities. This technology allows the car to push electricity back out through the charging port. For David, the potential outcome of this is a radically different relationship with his utility provider. During the peak heat of the day, when the Arizona grid is strained and electricity prices spike to 50 cents per kilowatt hour, David's truck stops charging. Instead, it begins discharging, powering his home's air conditioning and appliances using the energy he stored at 3 a.m. when rates were only 8 cents. However, this sophisticated energy management comes with a hidden layer of surveillance and control. To participate in these smart grid programs, David has had to grant his utility company command access to his vehicle's battery. This means that during a grid emergency, the utility provider can remotely throttle David's charging speed, or even draw power from his truck to prevent a neighborhood blackout. Step by step, the autonomy of the individual driver is being traded for the stability of the collective infrastructure. Case studies from early adopters in California and Texas show that while this can save a household up to $1,500 a year in energy costs, it also introduces a new form of range anxiety. David might wake up at 6 a.m. only to find his truck has only 40% charge because the grid borrowed his energy overnight to keep the lights on in the next town over. This brings us to the most critical and least understood metric of 2026, the Battery Health Score, or BHS. In the same way that a used car buyer in 2016 would look at the odometer to judge a vehicle's value, a buyer in 2026 looks at the BHS. Every time David's battery undergoes a charge and discharge cycle, especially when it's used to power his home or the grid, the lithium-ion cells experience microscopic degradation. By 2026, the potential outcomes of this degradation are tracked with surgical precision by the vehicle's battery management system. When David eventually decides to trade in his truck, the dealership won't care about the shiny paint or the low mileage. They will plug in a diagnostic tool that pulls his lifetime thermal exposure and cycle count data. If David has frequently used DC fast charging, which generates immense heat, or if he has allowed the battery to sit at 0% or 100% for long periods, his BHS might be a 72 out of 100. Historical trends suggest that a battery with a 70% health score loses nearly 50% of its market value, because the cost of replacement remains the single most expensive repair in the automotive world, often exceeding $20,000 for a long-range pack. This has created a new class of battery anxiety among American drivers. In 2026, manufacturers like Tesla and GM are offering battery insurance as a separate monthly subscription. For $29 a month, David can insure against unnatural degradation. But there is a catch. The insurance is only valid if the car's telematics prove that David has followed a strict charging protocol. If the car's AI co-pilot detects that David is fast charging in temperatures above 100 degrees without preconditioning the battery, the claim can be denied. Your driving and charging habits are being monitored not just for safety, but for the preservation of the manufacturer's warranty liability. The 2026 charging landscape has also been transformed by the NACS conquest. As we mentioned earlier, the North American charging standard is now the law of the land. But in 2026, the physical act of plugging in is starting to feel obsolete for the premium segment. Imagine if David didn't have to plug in at all. The 2026 Genesis GV90 and the ultra-luxury Cadillac Celestiq are now debuting resonant magnetic induction charging. David simply parks his car over a pad embedded in his garage floor, and power is transferred wirelessly through an electromagnetic field. While wireless charging offers a 90% efficiency rate, nearly matching a physical cable, it introduces a new infrastructure challenge. These pads require high-voltage 240-volt circuits that most older American homes simply cannot support without a $4,000 panel upgrade. Furthermore, the in-car economy has moved into the charging station itself. When David does use a public enthusiast fast charger, the stall recognizes his vehicle's digital ID. He doesn't pull out a credit card or an app. The charger handshakes with the car, and the billing is handled automatically. The power move of 2026 is about more than just electricity. It is about the total integration of the vehicle into the American energy and financial markets. Your car is now a node on the grid, a data point for the utility company, and a depreciating asset whose value is tied to a secret health score. But as we master the flow of electrons, a more dangerous challenge is lurking in the shadows. If our cars are now completely dependent on the grid and the cloud, what happens when the digital shield fails? In the next part of our deep dive masterclass, we are going to explore automotive cybersecurity, the ghost and the machine. We will look at the rise of carjacking 2.0, where hackers don't need a crowbar to steal your car, they just need your IP address. We'll examine the specific 2026 vulnerabilities that could allow a stranger to lock you inside your own vehicle or disable your brakes from across the ocean. The future is connected, but that connection is a two-way street that leads straight into your private life. To understand the vulnerability of the 2026 driving experience, imagine a woman named Amanda living in a high-rise in Charlotte, North Carolina. It is a rainy Tuesday morning in April 2026, and Amanda is running late for a critical presentation. She walks into her parking garage and approaches her 2026 electric sedan. She doesn't reach for a key fob. Her car recognizes the ultra-wideband signal from her smartphone. The door handles extend, and the interior ambient lighting glows a welcoming blue. This is the peak of convenience, but for Amanda, this morning is about to turn into a case study for the dark side of connectivity. As she sits in the driver's seat and presses the start button, the massive pillar-to-pillar glass dashboard doesn't show her navigation or her battery range. Instead, the screen turns a jarring crimson red with a single block of white text. This vehicle is locked. To regain access to the drivetrain and climate control, transfer $500 in digital currency to the following address. You have 60 minutes before the vehicle's firmware is permanently erased. Amanda is a victim of what security experts in 2026 call carjacking 2.0. In the previous era of automotive history, a car thief needed a Slim Jim, a screwdriver, or at the very least, a signal booster to trick a physical key fob. In 2026, the car has become a high-value node on the Internet of Things, making it susceptible to the same type of ransomware attacks that have historically plagued hospitals and municipal governments. The shift to software-defined vehicles means that every mechanical function of Amanda's car, the steering, the brakes, the locks, and the power delivery, is managed by a centralized computer running millions of lines of code. This code is full of APIs, or application programming interfaces, which allow the car to talk to the manufacturer's cloud, the charging network, and even third-party apps for parking or insurance. Historical trends show that as cars became more connected, the attack surface grew exponentially. In 2023 and 2024, security researchers demonstrated that they could find vulnerabilities in the telematics systems of nearly a dozen major brands, allowing them to remotely start engines or track locations. By 2026, with the total number of connected vehicles in the United States exceeding 100 million, these vulnerabilities have been industrialized by malicious actors. The potential outcome for a driver like Amanda is a total loss of physical agency. She is not just locked out of her car, she is locked inside a digital contract where the manufacturer's security shield has been bypassed. This vulnerability exists because of the software bill of materials. In 2026, a car is not built by a single company. The infotainment might run on a modified version of Android, the battery management might use open-source libraries from a third-party developer, and the driver assistance sensors might rely on proprietary code from a tech startup. If any one of those subcomponents has a zero-day vulnerability, the entire vehicle is at risk. Step by step, a hacker can gain entry through a seemingly harmless portal, like a satellite radio receiver or a Bluetooth pairing protocol, and then pivot into the car's controller area network, known as the CAN bus. Once inside the CAN bus, the hacker can send commands that look identical to the car's own internal signals. Consider the case study of the 2026 relay attack evolution. Historically, thieves would stand near a victim's front door to pick up the signal of a key fob inside the house and relay it to the car in the driveway. By 2026, manufacturers have largely switched to ultra-wideband (UWB) chips that measure the time of flight of the signal to ensure the phone is physically present. However, hackers have countered this by targeting the cloud token. When Amanda's phone talks to her car, it's often verifying her identity through a server owned by the manufacturer. If a hacker breaches that central server, or simply tricks Amanda into clicking a phishing link that steals her digital key token, they don't need to be anywhere near her car. They can lock her doors or disable her engine from a different continent. The 2026 model year has seen the implementation of the UN R155 and R156 regulations, which mandate that all new vehicles must have a cybersecurity management system. This means Amanda's car is equipped with an onboard intrusion detection system that constantly monitors the vehicle's internal network for anomalous behavior. If the car's computer sees a command to open the trunk while the car is moving at 70 miles per hour, the system should recognize this as an impossible or malicious command and block it. But in 2026, as AI becomes more sophisticated, so do the jailbreaking tools used by hackers. We are seeing a digital arms race where the car's defensive AI is constantly being tested by offensive AI. Another significant risk factor in 2026 is the jailbreak economy. As we discussed in earlier parts of this masterclass, many features in 2026 cars are locked behind subscriptions. A driver might want to unlock the performance mode on their electric SUV without paying the $2,000 factory fee. This has led to a thriving secondary market for third-party firmware updates or tuning chips. When a driver like Amanda's neighbor installs an unverified software patch to get free heated seats, they are effectively opening a back door into their vehicle's most sensitive systems. These gray market updates often lack the rigorous security protocols of the manufacturer, turning a simple car into a zombie vehicle that can be recruited into a botnet to launch massive cyber attacks on the nation's power grid or traffic infrastructure. The 2026 reality also includes the threat of vehicle-to-infrastructure (V2I) poisoning. As cities in the US become smarter, your car is constantly talking to traffic lights, toll booths, and digital road signs to optimize traffic flow. A potential outcome of this connectivity is the ghost traffic jam. A hacker could spoof V2I signals to tell every car on a highway that there is a massive accident ahead. The 2026 autonomous systems, programmed for safety, would all simultaneously slam on their brakes or divert to side streets, paralyzing a city's logistics without ever touching a single vehicle. For the American public, the cost of this digital risk is manifesting in cyber insurance premiums. By late 2026, many major insurance providers are requiring a cybersecurity audit before they will issue a policy on a high-end connected vehicle. If your car's software is out of date, or if you have installed non-approved third-party apps on your dashboard, your rates could skyrocket or your coverage could be voided in the event of a digital theft. The car has moved from being a mechanical asset to a digital liability that requires constant patching and vigilance. Amanda's situation ends when she calls her manufacturer's emergency concierge. Because her car is always on, the technician is able to send a kernel reset signal via satellite to her vehicle, wiping the malicious code and restoring the factory settings. But the experience has left her shaken. She realizes that her car is not a fortress. It is a glass house connected to a global network. She spent $50,000 on a machine that can be turned against her in the blink of an eye. As we move toward the final stages of this deep dive into 2026, we have to look beyond the technology and the security. We have to look at the people. If cars are this expensive, this heavy, and this vulnerable, who is actually going to own them? The year 2026 is the year the American dream of car ownership officially begins to dissolve. In the next part, we will explore the rise of the subscription society and the fractional ownership models that are replacing the traditional dealership. We'll look at why you might never buy another car again, and why the 2026 used car market is becoming a graveyard for brick technology that no one wants to touch. The very concept of the title in your name is about to become a relic of the past, and you need to understand what replaces it. The transition away from individual vehicle titles is not a sudden collapse, but a calculated migration into what economists in 2026 call the access economy. To see this in action, we look at a resident of Austin, Texas named Mark. Mark is a 34-year-old professional who, in the year 2021, would have spent weeks researching the best financing rates for a 5-year auto loan. In 2026, Mark does not have a car loan. He does not have a title in his safe deposit box. Instead, he has a mobility tier on his smartphone, Mark pays a flat monthly fee of $1,100 to a manufacturer-led consortium. This single transaction covers his 2026 electric crossover, his comprehensive insurance, all scheduled maintenance, and even his home charging installation. Mark has traded the pride of ownership for the certainty of a fixed cost, but in doing so, he has entered a system where he is no longer the master of his machine. Historical trends in other industries, such as software and media, provide a clear roadmap for this shift. Just as we moved from owning physical DVDs to subscribing to streaming services, the 2026 automotive market has realized that vehicles are becoming too complex and too expensive for the average consumer to manage individually. The potential outcome of this trend is the rise of the mobility as a service, or MaaS model. For Mark, this means he never has to worry about a surprise $3,000 repair bill for a cooling pump or a sensor array. If his 2026 vehicle has a hardware failure, the consortium simply swaps it for an identical model within hours. But the trade-off is total compliance. Mark's subscription agreement contains thousands of words of fine print. If he exceeds a certain mileage, if he takes the car outside of a geo-fenced area, or if his driving data indicates he is a high-risk user, the consortium can unilaterally increase his monthly rate or even terminate his access, leaving him stranded without a way to get to work. This leads us to the concept of fractional ownership. In high-density urban areas like Miami or San Francisco, 2026 has seen the emergence of neighborhood fleets. Imagine a luxury condominium complex that owns a fleet of 20 high-end electric vehicles. The residents do not own cars, they own shares in the fleet. When a resident needs a car, they use an app to summon one from the building's automated garage. The vehicle arrives at the front door, clean and fully charged. This model solves the 2026 parking crisis and reduces the physical footprint of vehicles in the city. However, it also means that the car is never truly yours. You cannot leave your sunglasses in the center console. You cannot customize the seat settings beyond what is saved in your digital profile. The car has become a sanitized, communal utility, much like an elevator or a public park bench. The most significant casualty of this new era is the 2026 used car market, which has effectively become a graveyard for outdated technology. Historically, a 10-year-old car was a reliable, affordable asset for a student or a working family. In 2026, a 10-year-old software-defined vehicle is a nightmare. Consider a driver trying to sell a 2019 electric vehicle in 2026. The battery technology is 2 generations behind, the infotainment system no longer supports modern apps, and the manufacturer has stopped providing security patches for the onboard computer. This is what we call brick technology, because the 2026 infrastructure relies so heavily on V2X communication and advanced security protocols. These older vehicles are being restricted from certain smart lanes or high-occupancy zones because they lack the necessary digital handshake to interact with the city's grid. The potential outcome is a massive wealth transfer, as the residual value of legacy vehicles evaporates, forcing more Americans into the subscription model because they can no longer afford the risk of owning an obsolete asset. Step by step, the 2026 dealership has transformed into an experience center. When you walk into a Ford or Toyota storefront in 2026, the salesperson isn't trying to sell you a piece of hardware. They are selling you a life bundle. They walk you through various tiers of connectivity, performance, and autonomy. Do you want the 200-mile range for city driving? Or the 500-mile range for regional travel? Do you want the Level 3 autonomy package for your daily commute? Each of these is a toggle in the software. In 2026, the car you buy is physically identical to every other car on the lot. The only difference is the digital permissions associated with your account. This allows manufacturers to maintain an unprecedented level of control over the secondary market. If you try to sell your ownership to another person, the manufacturer can charge a software transfer fee or simply reset the vehicle to its base settings, forcing the new owner to buy all the features again. Case studies from the 2026 rental market show that the big players like Hertz and Enterprise have moved from being travel providers to being fleet managers for the general public. They are now the primary purchasers of new vehicles in the United States. In 2026, nearly 60% of new cars are registered to corporate fleets rather than private individuals. This corporate dominance allows these companies to dictate vehicle design. We are seeing a move toward the universal cabin, interiors that are designed for durability and ease of cleaning rather than personal comfort or style. The 2026 car is becoming a modular box. But there is a darker side to the end of ownership that involves the financial quantification of the driver. In 2026, your mobility score is as important as your credit score. This score is derived from your driving data, your payment history on vehicle subscriptions, and your battery stewardship habits. If Mark in Austin is late on his subscription payment, his 2026 vehicle doesn't just get repossessed by a tow truck in the middle of the night. The vehicle simply refuses to unlock its doors, or in more extreme cases, it autonomously drives itself back to the manufacturer's local hub. In the 2026 landscape, the repo man is a line of code. This total integration of finance and hardware means that for the US public, the car is the ultimate tool of social and economic control. As we look at the empty space in the American driveway where the family car used to sit, we see a new type of freedom emerging. A freedom from maintenance, from depreciation, and from the hassle of insurance. But it is a fragile freedom that depends entirely on your standing with a handful of global corporations. The 2026 vehicle is the most advanced machine ever built, but it is also a lease on your daily life. As we conclude this exploration of the death of ownership, we must turn our attention to the final frontier of the 2026 driving experience. If we don't own the cars and we don't control the software, then who is actually doing the driving? In the next part of our deep dive masterclass, we are going to look at the autonomy threshold. We will explore why 2026 is the year that Level 3 and Level 4 self-driving technology finally hits the mainstream, and why the most dangerous thing you can do on a 2026 highway is put your hands on the steering wheel. We'll examine the liability shift, where the car companies, not the drivers, are finally starting to take the blame for accidents. The human driver is becoming a spectator in their own life, and the consequences for our cities and our psychology are profound. To understand the autonomy threshold, we must look at a driver named Tyler as he merges onto the I-405 in Los Angeles on a Tuesday morning in 2026. Tyler is behind the wheel of a 2026 Lucid Gravity, but he is not actually driving. He is sitting in a relaxed posture, his seat slightly reclined, while he reviews a set of digital documents projected onto his side window. This is the reality of Level 3 autonomy, which by 2026 has transitioned from a luxury experiment into a regulated, mainstream feature of the American highway system. Historically, we have lived in the era of driver assistance, where features like lane keeping and adaptive cruise control required the driver to remain constantly vigilant with their hands on the wheel. In 2026, the potential outcome of years of machine learning and sensor integration is the legal and technical permission to look away. Tyler's Lucid is part of a new generation of vehicles equipped with what engineers call the Diamond Shield. This system utilizes 3 redundant layers of perception, high-resolution cameras, solid-state LiDAR, and imaging radar. Historical trends in the early 2020s saw a fierce debate between vision-only systems and sensor fusion systems. By 2026, the industry consensus has shifted toward fusion. The LiDAR units on Tyler's car, which cost nearly $10,000 per unit just 5 years ago, are now mass-produced solid-state components that cost less than $500. They provide a precise, 3-dimensional map of the environment that is unaffected by the glare of the morning sun or the heavy coastal fog. This technological maturity has allowed the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration to establish a new safety framework for 2026, permitting eyes-off operation on pre-mapped, divided highways across the United States. But the most revolutionary aspect of Tyler's commute is not the technology itself, but the liability shift. In a landmark case study from 2024, Mercedes-Benz became the first manufacturer to announce that they would accept legal responsibility for accidents that occur while their Level 3 drive pilot system is engaged. By 2026, this has become the industry standard. When Tyler activates his highway pilot, a specific indicator on his dashboard and an external blue light on his vehicle illuminate, signaling to law enforcement and other drivers that the manufacturer is now the legal operator of the vehicle. If the car's sensors fail to detect a debris field on the highway and a collision occurs, Tyler's personal insurance is not the primary payer. Instead, the manufacturer's corporate liability policy takes over. This is the single biggest change in the history of American tort law, and it has fundamentally altered the economics of car insurance. However, this freedom comes with a handoff problem. Imagine if Tyler's car suddenly encounters a construction zone where the lane markings have been ground away and replaced with orange cones that don't match the high-definition map. In 2026, the car doesn't just slam on the brakes. It initiates a 10-second handover sequence. A haptic vibration pulses through Tyler's seat, and the interior lighting shifts to a bright, attention-grabbing amber. The car's AI co-pilot issues a clear verbal command, transitioning to manual control in 10 seconds. 10:08. Tyler must put down his documents, grasp the wheel, and prove his engagement to the interior infrared cameras. The potential outcomes of a failed handover are a major focus of 2026 safety regulations. If Tyler does not take control, perhaps he has fallen into a deep sleep or suffered a medical emergency. The car enters a safe state maneuver. It will not simply shut off. It will use its 360-degree sensors to navigate to the nearest shoulder, come to a complete stop, and automatically initiate a 911 call through its integrated 5G emergency link. This represents a massive leap in public safety, but it also highlights the panic window, those critical seconds where a human must suddenly re-engage with a complex environment they have been ignoring for the last 30 minutes. Beyond the highway, 2026 marks the explosion of Level 4 geofenced autonomy in American cities. While Tyler still drives his own car on the highway, cities like Phoenix, Las Vegas, and Miami have become blueprints for the robotaxi revolution. In these cities, companies like Waymo and Zoox have expanded their service areas to cover entire metropolitan regions. These vehicles have no steering wheels and no pedals. For the US public, this has created a new category of mobility, the driverless tier. Historical trends show that young professionals in urban centers are increasingly choosing not to own a car or even have a license, relying instead on these autonomous fleets that operate with 99.9% reliability within their designated zones. The infrastructure of 2026 has evolved to support this. We are seeing the widespread implementation of V2I, or vehicle-to-infrastructure communication. In Tyler City, the traffic lights are equipped with DSRC transmitters that broadcast their status to every approaching vehicle. When Tyler's car approaches an intersection, it knows exactly when the light will turn green to within a millisecond. This allows for a phenomenon known as green wave synchronization, where platoons of autonomous vehicles move through a city without ever needing to stop, drastically reducing urban congestion and carbon emissions. But there is a psychological cost to this transition. As Tyler becomes a spectator in his own commute, the very nature of the drive is changing. Historically, the American car was a symbol of rugged individualism and the freedom of the road. In 2026, that is being replaced by the third space. The car is now a mobile office, a theater, or a lounge. Case studies in automotive psychology suggest that as humans stop driving, we lose a certain level of spatial awareness and mechanical intuition. We are trading the skill of navigation for the luxury of time. For some, this is a fair trade. For others, it is the final erosion of a core American competency. The economic impact of this shift is also reshaping the American landscape. Because Tyler can work or rest while he drives, the commute barrier is breaking down. In 2019, a 2-hour commute was considered a deal-breaker for most employees. In 2026, with Level 3 autonomy, that 2-hour block is productive time. This is leading to a potential outcome of exurban expansion, where people are willing to live further away from city centers in cheaper, more spacious homes because the car has effectively eliminated the dead time of the daily grind. This is shifting real estate values in a way that has not been seen since the creation of the interstate highway system in the 1950s. As we stand at the autonomy threshold in 2026, we see a world where the machine is finally becoming a reliable partner rather than just a tool. But as the car takes over the driving, it is also taking over the decision-making. We are entering an era where algorithms must decide the trolley problem in real time, choosing between the safety of the passenger and the safety of a pedestrian in an unavoidable collision scenario. These moral codes are now part of the 2026 vehicle's firmware, audited by the government and debated in the halls of Congress. But as our cars become more independent and more powerful, there is one final piece of the puzzle we must address. If these vehicles are driving themselves, how are they affecting the very planet they travel on? The push for 2026 hasn't just been about automation, it has been about a total environmental overhaul. In the final part of our deep dive masterclass, we are going to look at the green horizon. We will examine the secret life cycle of the 2026 battery, the rise of carbon-neutral manufacturing, and the shocking reality of what happens to all those old gas-powered cars we've left behind. The future is clean, but the path to get there is messier than you think. Stay with us for the conclusion of the 2026 masterclass. To understand the true cost of the green horizon, we must look at a driver named Maria in suburban Georgia. Maria has just taken delivery of her 2026 Volvo EX90, a vehicle marketed as the most sustainable machine ever produced by the brand. The interior is made of Nordico, a material created from recycled PET bottles and bioattributed material from forests in Sweden and Finland. To the average observer, Maria's car represents the final victory over carbon emissions. But as we conduct this deep dive, we find that the 2026 environmental reality is far more complex than a tailpipe without smoke. Maria's car is a participant in a global experiment called the circular economy, and the success of this experiment depends on a hidden infrastructure that is only now, in 2026, reaching its full scale. The 2026 model year marks the official introduction of the battery passport in the United States. Following historical trends set by the European Union, the U.S. Department of Energy has successfully pushed for a digital tracking system for every kilowatt-hour of energy storage on the road. When Maria scans a QR code hidden in her door jamb, she can see the exact genealogy of her vehicle's battery. She can see that the lithium was sourced from a direct lithium extraction facility in the Salton Sea, the cobalt was recovered from a recycling facility in Nevada, and the nickel was processed using renewable geothermal energy. This level of transparency is not just for peace of mind. It is a regulatory requirement to qualify for the 2026 Clean Vehicle Tax Credits, which now mandate that at least 80% of battery minerals be sourced or recycled within North America or its free trade partners. The potential outcome of this transparency is a radical shift in the mining industry. Step by step, the 2026 automotive sector is moving away from the destructive extract and discard model. We are seeing the rise of urban mining. Case studies from companies like Redwood Materials and Li-Cycle show that by 2026, the technology to recover 95% of key battery minerals, lithium, cobalt, copper, and nickel, has moved from the laboratory to industrial-scale production. Maria's battery is not a single-use product. It is a temporary storage vessel for precious minerals that will eventually be melted down and turned into a battery for a car in 2040. This is the closed-loop dream, but the 2026 reality still faces a massive bottleneck. We simply do not have enough old EVs to recycle yet to meet the surging demand for new ones. This brings us to the most uncomfortable aspect of 2026, the great gas scrappage. Imagine Maria's neighbor, John, who still drives a 2015 internal combustion engine truck. In 2026, John's truck has become a stranded asset. As more cities in the United States implement clean air zones, and as the federal gas tax is supplemented by the vehicle miles travel tax we discussed earlier, the cost of keeping a legacy gas vehicle on the road is skyrocketing. Historical trends in the 2026 used car market show that the resale value of non-hybrid gasoline vehicles has dropped by 40% in just 24 months. John is facing a dilemma. Does he spend $5,000 to maintain an aging engine? Or does he participate in a cash for carbon program where the government or a manufacturer pays him to scrap his truck in exchange for a credit toward a 2026 electron volt subscription? By late 2026, we are seeing massive ICE graveyards appearing on the outskirts of major logistics hubs like Memphis and Chicago. These are not traditional junkyards. They are high-tech disassembly centers where robots strip the steel, aluminum, and plastics from millions of legacy gas cars. The goal is to feed the green steel plants that are now coming online. Manufacturers like Ford and GM are using 2026 as the launchpad for vehicles built with steel produced using green hydrogen rather than coal-fired blast furnaces. For the U.S. public, this means that even if your car has no engine, the energy required to forge its frame is finally becoming carbon neutral. But we must also address the tire crisis of 2026. While Maria's EV produces zero tailpipe emissions, it is significantly heavier than the gas car it replaced. Data from 2025 and 2026 suggests that the increased weight of EVs leads to a 20% increase in tire wear, which releases microscopic rubber particles into the environment. To combat this, 2026 tire technology has undergone a silent revolution. Companies like Michelin and Goodyear are now shipping EV-specific tires made from dandelion rubber and sunflower oils, designed with high-load compounds that minimize particulate shedding. For Maria, this means her tires are more expensive, nearly $300 per corner, but they are a necessary part of the 2026 environmental compliance stack. The manufacturing process itself has also moved into the gigafactory era of 2026. At facilities like Ford's Blue Oval City in Tennessee, the entire production cycle is designed to be carbon negative. The factory doesn't just use solar panels. It uses a massive wastewater recycling system that ensures not a single drop of industrial water leaves the site. The potential outcome of this Scope 3 emissions focus is that by 2026, the embedded carbon in a new car, the emissions produced during its birth, is 50% lower than it was in 2020. This is the final piece of the puzzle that allows manufacturers to claim they are saving the planet, but it requires a level of industrial surveillance that would have been unthinkable a decade ago. Every pallet of parts that enters the factory in 2026 has its own carbon footprint tag, and if a supplier fails to meet their green quota, they are automatically delisted by the manufacturer's AI-driven procurement system. As we conclude this 10-part masterclass, we see that the car of 2026 is a miracle of engineering, a hub of surveillance, a financial weight, and a digital companion. We have moved from the era of the driver to the era of the passenger. We have traded the simplicity of the internal combustion engine for the complexity of the global battery supply chain. Maria in her Volvo and James in his Silverado are the pioneers of a new American way of life, one where mobility is a service, data is the currency, and the road is a monitored, regulated, and optimized digital corridor. The 2026 automotive reality is not just about what is under the hood. It is about who is behind the curtain. We have seen how legislation, technology, and economics have converged to create a vehicle that is safer, cleaner, and more efficient, but at the cost of the absolute privacy and the right to repair that define the 20th century. You are now equipped with the knowledge to navigate this landscape, to avoid the subscription traps, to understand your battery health score, and to prepare for a world where your car might just be smarter than you are. But as the 2026 models fill the showrooms and the charging stations multiply, a new question is already beginning to emerge on the horizon. If 2026 was the year of the software-defined car, 2030 is shaping up to be the year of the software-defined city. What happens when your car isn't just a vehicle, but a literal component of the building you live in? What happens when the flying taxi prototypes we see in 2026 finally become a standard part of the Uber app? The road ended in 2026, but the journey into the vertical city is just beginning. In our next series, we will dive into the 2030 urban blueprint and the rise of the autonomous sky. The future is moving up, and you don't want to be left on the ground. Keep your eyes on the data and your hands if the car lets you on the wheel.